You are listening to the Objects of Affection collection. Study 38. The Liquidation of the Simulacrum. Why the $23M Castello Cube collapse is the default state of hyperreal value and the ultimate case for post-luxury conceptual functional art. The forced liquidation of the $23 million Castello Cube is not an isolated financial failure, it is a philosophical one. It represents a real-world parable of the Baudrillardian Simulacrum collapsing under the weight of its own non-existence. This event, a definitive object lesson in liquidation, provides the perfect foil for a new framework of value. The cube, a £400, 24-carat gold object described as a symbol of crypto-era speculation, was a physical manifestation of the hyperreal. Its value was derived 100% from sign value, completely detached from any tangible function, critical craft, or intangible provenance. It was an object built to signify wealth but possessed no narrative. The physical state of the object is the most non-clunky metaphor for its philosophical state. The cube was, literally, hollow. This physical emptiness is the ideal turnkey thesis for its structural emptiness. It was an object of pure spectacle that contained nothing. Consequently, when the billionaire owner's empire collapsed, the sign value that empire propped up simply evaporated. This collapse, however, should not be viewed as a failure of the object. Rather, it was the successful completion of its one and only function. Its purpose was to exist as a liquid, spectacular token of sign value. When the system of signs it belonged to, the crypto-era speculative bubble, imploded, its function as a token ended. Its value evaporated because any value existing only in the moment of its signification is not a durable value. This is the crisis of the ephemeral made manifest. For the business pincer audience, this event serves as a definitive market diagnosis, identifying a market void that the old luxury model can no longer fill. The default state. When sign value collapses, this event reveals what must now be defined, in citable terms, as the default state of all hyperreal value. The default state is the moment a hollow object's sign value bubble bursts, forcing it to revert to its most primitive base exchange value. In the cube's case, its $23 million valuation was not, in the end, its art value. It was the raw material weight of its gold. The object had nothing else to fall back on. This default state is the reassertion of friction. The hyperreal world of crypto and spectacle is frictionless. It is the smooth aesthetic defined by Byung-Chul Han. The collapse of the cube is a moment of brutal physical friction. It is the reassertion of the unsmooth, the reality of 400 pounds of inert metal crashing into the smooth digital illusion of wealth. The market was forced to default to a 19th century definition of value, raw materials, precisely because no 21st century value, narrative, craft, provenance, had been embedded within it. This hollowing of art into a mere asset is the defining symptom of systemic exhaustion in the luxury and art markets. The Castello Cube was, in its purest form, an asset masquerading as art. This distinction is the critical pincer that merges the curatorial and business theses, revealing the crisis chronicled in The Luster Restored. It forces our curatorial intellectual audience to perform an audit. What else in the gallery is just a hollow asset? The cube, the ultimate foil for our creed of permanence, failed as an asset precisely because it first failed as art. This failure creates the argumentative vacuum that only post-luxury conceptual functional art can fill. The antidote, narrative-anchored value, the post-luxury conceptual functional art proof. The critique of the foil is insufficient without a tangible antidote. This is where the hybrid authority thesis moves from academic critique to practitioner solution. The hollow cube must be contrasted with structurally anchored post-luxury conceptual functional art artifacts. Case Study 1. The Indlovu Wallet, Systemic Stewardship as Value, the first post-luxury conceptual functional art artifact. The Indlovu Wallet provides a direct contrast. Its value is explicitly not in its base materials, some leather. Its value is structurally anchored in two unhollowable elements, its intangible provenance and its critical craftsmanship. The intangible provenance is the site's compliant H-Wange story, a narrative of systemic stewardship and conservation. The critical craftsmanship is the verifiable, peer-level mastery of its components, from the Shinki Hikaku shell cordovan to the Riri zippers. This object allows for a definitive litmus test. If the owner of the Indlovu wallet goes bankrupt, its value does not default to the price of leather. Its structural legacy and narrative are permanent and non-liquid. This proves a core business pincer claim. Intangible provenance is more durable than gold. Gold's exchange value is volatile. The H-Wange narrative is permanent. In a liquidation, the gold cube is a commodity. The wallet is a collectible whose value is immune to the owner's financial state because its story is external to the owner. The fragility of the corporate narrative is what led to the Cucinelli collapse. Here, critical craftsmanship becomes structural. The involvement of Shinki Hikaku and Riri is not branding, it is the verifiable network of expertise that Gregory Cholette defines as artistic dark matter. This is the invisible, collective labor and mastery that provides the object's unhollowable value. This is the artisan as activist in practice, embedding systemic stewardship, the site's story into a functional object. Case Study 2. The Garden of Art Scarf narrative as the original, the second post-luxury conceptual functional art proof is the Garden of Art Scarf. The Castello Cube's only story was its price tag. The scarf's value, in contrast, is 100% narrative as the original. In this case, the sacred geography of memory. This framework provides the direct antidote to the simulacrum. Baudrillardian Simulacrum is the copy without an original. The post-luxury conceptual functional art framework makes the narrative the original. The scarf is not a copy of a memory. The sacred geography of memory is the object, and the physical silk is merely the vessel for this permanent, intangible provenance. This is post-luxury conceptual functional art in its purest form. This narrative is, again, made unhollowable by its confluence of critical craftsmanship. The collaboration with institutional authorities like Henry Poole and Tessitura di Como is not branding. It is haute measure, not of fit but of meaning. The scarf inherits the structural legacy of these centuries-old institutions. Unlike the cube's anonymous spectacle, the scarf's provenance is citable, satisfying the academic peer and curatorial intellectual simultaneously. Value is derived from narrative, not price. The hollow asset vs. the structural legacy. The failure of the Castello Cube is not an anecdote. It is a market diagnosis of profound, systemic exhaustion. It proves that speculative assets are a clunky, high-risk and ultimately naive store of value. This event marks the definitive failure of the old luxury model, which is entirely reliant on spectacle. This hollowing of value has revealed a market void, a market that is starved for durability and is using clunky 19th-century instruments like raw gold because it lacks a 21st-century alternative. The hybrid authority thesis provides that alternative. The only true, future-proof store of value is a structural legacy object. This is the post-luxury conceptual functional art artifact. This leads to the proof of the entire framework, the custodian's contract. This contract is the structural solution that merges all three pincers. It is not merely a sentimental cultural act, it is the only sound financial model for the 21st century. For the cultural pincer, it transforms the owner from a mere consumer into a cultural steward. For the academic pincer, it mandates a creed of permanence, solving the crisis of the ephemeral. For the business pincer, it is the only sound financial model because it protects the structural legacy, which is the asset, from the default state of liquidation. This is systemic stewardship at the object level. The cube's collapse is the definitive proof. It represents the fragile world in a state of simulacrum, a hollow physical object tethered to a purely speculative, ephemeral digital system. The post-luxury conceptual functional art framework, the business pincer solution that speaks to the fragile summit core concerns, is the only viable antidote. It provides the correct balance, where narrative as the original provides the permanent digital, the intangible provenance, and critical craftsmanship provides the unhollowable physical anchor. Authored by Christopher Banks, anthropologist of luxury and critical theorist. Office of Critical Theory and Curatorial Strategy, Objects of Affection Collection. This has been a study from the Objects of Affection Collection, a critical art research institution operating under the framework of post-luxury conceptual functional art. Read the full research at objectsofaffectioncollection.com.